I've thrown it in my normal places elsewhere as well. So.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to GeekWatch. Yes, we are not dead. We were just on vacation for a couple weeks. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have 1, 2, 3, 4 good brothers. Ha 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 ha. Sorry I didn't do the countdown as usual, but like I said, I've been gone for 2 weeks. Still trying to get back into things.
I baned you, and I didn't even know I was baning you. Thank you, Mike.
Oh, this is gonna be fun, but if we're doing it to him this early.
He sideshow bobbed himself here.
Yes, he did.
We have the flamboyant flyer, also known as Good Brother Flutter. We have the officially unofficial cosplayer of our temple, Good Brother Slick Rick, who is probably drowning in cheeseburgers right now.
No, there's none available in the whole wide range of the Kansas City area, all the way over to Lawrence. Yes, the Alan Reed shortage is going on strong right now. Thankfully, he hasn't touched the barbecue.
For those of us who have not been in the Kansas City area, how far is Lawrence from the city proper?
From city proper, okay, it's about 30 minutes away from where I live, and I live about 20, 30. So yeah, about an hour.
Roughly an hour.
Yep.
Yeah.
So even the people an hour away from the city are short on cheeseburgers.
Yeah, I feel bad for Lawrence because that's where Kansas University is. And oof. So that's a college town.
There's a riot waiting to happen.
Only a small one.
I don't. I almost started one with when I led some ducks into a dorm for a prank at a college in northern Minnesota.
Oh, that's a new story.
We led half a dozen ducks into the elevator, hit all the buttons. It was if you've ever had to handle ducks, which I have, you know that they make huge ass messes.
They're also assholes.
Yes, they are. They're
Anyway.
Not skis, though.
Yeah. We have making his triumphant return. The also professionally unprofessional Sean Schimmel stand-in. Good Brother Shades. And the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadare Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, Good Brother Xanatrix.
He's had a 2-week sabbatical from baning. You know what that
Yes.
means, people.
He's got to step it up here. But also, for those who don't know about the Sean Schimmel thing, there's a reason he said that. Because in my voice acting career lately, I've had more than a handful of comments of people saying I sound like Goku.
Mm-hmm.
I have receipts for this, people.
Which, truth be told, I can see why people would say that.
Yeah.
At the very least, you have a better take on abridged shows than he does.
Considering I've actually participated in one in my lifetime, but that's neither here nor there. Also, before we get started, I have to do something real quick.
Go ahead.
Because I gotta hit a button. More specifically, I gotta hit this one.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. おめでとう! 素晴らしい!
Now, who's that Kagami button for? Me! My birthday is tomorrow!
Okay, so you want the Atlantic salmon or the cod?
Put the fish down, fucker!
Why you gotta waste good cod like that? Cod's delicious.
Seriously! If you're
So
gonna give me fish, you better be ready for it to get cooked up and served.
Shades, Are you older than dirt or older than buried basalt?
That's a good question. The answer is yes.
Good answer.
I'll be turning 39 tomorrow, as a matter of fact.
Happy advanced birthday. If I suppose I should count my blessings that you don't have any friends on the international date line. Otherwise they would have brought it up already.
Yeah, actually, no. Wait. I think I got my numbers wrong. I think I'm turning 38. A little tired today.
No worries, man.
Forgetting how many years old you are for the first sign of dementia.
It has begun.
But seriously, whenever my birthday comes up, Homer ends up being the first one to wish me happy birthday because he's from the future.
I can see the future.
Too sweet, Zed.
We are on the same wavelength, Shades.
Yes,
Same wavelength.
yes, we are.
Now, obviously, in one form or another, all of us are fans of animation. Animation, as far as the medium as a whole. None of this East versus West bullshit. But the medium of animation, and yes, it is a medium, not a genre. Anyone calling it a genre shall be keelhauled. Anyone repeatedly calling it a genre shall be keelhauled twice. And as an aside, as somebody who worked at a video store, you have no idea how much that annoyed me. Or the uselessness of the family section.
Family movie.
And I've mentioned before how there would always be that one hockey mom or Karen who would bring up a movie shove it in my face and ask if it was appropriate for children. My favorite being when Watership Down was brought up.
Yep, and you said, and there was a part of you that told you to say nothing.
Yep. Similar thing happened with Wizard of Oz, not Wizard of Oz, with Return to Oz.
Let them learn.
Because I'm pretty sure we all made that mistake of thinking it was going to be like the original Wizard of Oz, and then we watched it. I know I did. and I had talked the family into watching the movie with me, which made me I wasn't even trying to prank them for that one. That just happened. But there has been the stigma for the longest time of animation being a child's affair, and you can certainly blame Disney for some of this, especially since whenever they tried to break out of that, it didn't do well financially. Some people are thinking, "Oh, you're talking about Atlantis, are you?" No, I'm talking about the Black Cauldron.
Oh yeah,
Which is a fantastically animated movie.
It's
that too many people have not watched.
It is a fantastic movie, but behind the scenes, it was a fucking shit show.
I know.
It's that the Black Cauldron is on one of my bucket list ones I want to see before I pass.
Oh.
Because I love the designs for the ending clips I've seen.
Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna say it's a bad movie, but just the behind the scenes tumult with it. And I know these days saying Disney and behind the scenes tumult is nothing new, but this was one of those classic everything was in chaos kind of situations.
This is one of those times where I would say, do you have any idea how little that narrows it down?
Yeah. You know, the kind of shit shows that Matt McMuscles talks about every 2 weeks. But the fact is, it just didn't sell all that well, and may have contributed to that whole animation is for children thing, because a lot of people's first introduction to animation was Disney. Which fair play, especially during the golden era. But
oh yeah.
even we as weebs had to deal with that because we would always use animation to overcompensate, I think, in regard to the whole animation is for children thing. I'm guilty of it. I'm pretty sure most of us had done it at least once. And the fact that those ads for the Anime Network, which I have burned into my brain because of how many DVDs of ADV films I have, and they bring up anime being not kids stuff, that would not have been brought up if the stigma wasn't there.
Yeah, sadly.
And of course, in the late '90s and early 2000s, we started to see more adult animation, or quote unquote adult animation, and when that became successful, largely because of the shock value of something that was seen as a kids thing being far less kid friendly.
I would say that some of the earliest examples in the 90s would have been The Simpsons, though, Monk.
I would say the Simpsons certainly, but The Simpsons didn't go all in on shock.
This is true.
It's a case of one man walked, so one man crawled, so another could walk.
Yes, because then we got South Park.
Yeah, and that's where this whole thing really ended up kicking into overdrive. Not necessarily with South Park itself, but with everything that came after it. A similar thing happened with Shrek, but to a lesser extent.
Mm-hmm.
And that is this idea of oddly enough, in an attempt to show that animation could be more adult, it ended up being childish in a different way, which is why you have the title you're seeing in front of you, The Childishness of Adult Animation. Now, some of you are seeing that the not Velma vanity project of Mindy Kaling is on this. I will admit that served as the impetus for the title, because I had to suffer through the first 2 episodes of that shit.
You poor bastard.
Apparently, even the second season that was announced is on consideration for canceling. So,
there's been a theory that I have been putting forward for the last few weeks regarding that so-called second season.
That it was just part of the first season, and they cut it in 2, and so they could guarantee a second season.
Yes.
I hear that still may not happen. They may just drop that second set of episodes.
But
negative presses they've gotten.
But I couldn't be the only one who noticed that the redesign of Velma just happens to look like showrunner Mindy Kaling.
No, everybody knows that.
Yeah, it's another obligatory or obvious but not obvious self-insert.
Well, I mean, I think you and I made the comparison when we first started talking about Velma, Monk, that this was just another I Am Not Starfire.
Yes.
Yeah. So the bigger problem, it's not even so much first of all, before anyone even says anything, because I know some idiot out there who is actually defending the show, though that pool is very fucking small. More smallest. But before anyone plays that card, it has nothing to do with the skin tone. Alright? That if it was just still Velma, but with a different skin tone, I don't think any of us would even be here saying anything about it. It wouldn't be an issue. The problem is that... Huh?
I was going to say it's with the way she acts.
Yeah, because she is so far removed from the Velma that we have all grown up with. A slightly more mature version? Great, let's see that. But it still has to be Velma. It still has to be Velma Dinkley. And from what little I've seen just from clips, she is anything but Velma Dinkley.
None of the Mystery Inc. crew is like their previous forms. They're all caricatures to either accentuate what is perceived to be their best features, or what is perceived to be their worst features. I'm looking at you, Fred! Literally made to be the dumbest guy there so that they can dunk on white people because he's a rich white guy.
Yeah, now, to be fair, Fred was never the smartest tool in the shed when it came to the Mystery Inc. crew, but he was no dumbass. He was just dumber compared to the rest of the crew.
Except for Shaggy.
Well, yeah.
Shaggy only had two
Shaggy
things
had
on his mind. Shaggy had his moments, but so did Fred. Shaggy's moments were food with the dog. By the way, did anybody notice that it was really creepy that they gave Shaggy's girlfriend in this show the nickname Scooby? Are you implying that Shaggy fucks dogs? Or that his girlfriend looks like a dog?
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
it's bad.
If this, I get the whole idea for Velma that, okay, it's through her point of view and everything, but still, what the yeah, no. That still doesn't help.
When they tried to go with the name Norville, for whatever reason, my mind kept hearing Norbit.
I mean, technically, Shaggy's name is indeed Norville. You can find it in some of the older cartoons, including Hey You Scooby-Doo when they were all kids.
Yeah.
Yes.
But he's never gone by that. Ever.
No.
I feel like that was an ass pull to try and justify it post hoc.
Yeah. They're trying to make it like, yeah, this is totally, we're keeping the name the right way. No. Just no. You're not convincing anybody. You know, you can have some new perspectives on the same character. This is the point I'm going to keep emphasizing with this show in particular, is that if you're going to adapt, make a more quote-unquote mature version of these characters, then you have to still keep the core of who they are. Velma has always been the super smart, but kind of nervous, shy, quiet,
Absent-minded.
Absent-minded at times. Yeah, that's the core of who she is. By taking any of those away, you have removed her from being Velma. And it's exactly what they did. They turned her into a sassy bitch.
Now some people have disagreed with me on this, but the analogy that I have used is this is the Mystery Inc. crew through the filter of Brian from Family Guy.
I'll see
Why
myself
is that
out.
so
What the?
accurate?
I don't want to see that. No.
Yeah.
But am I wrong though?
You're not.
No, you're not. That's why I'm going to go use another Family Guy reference. Done!
Because that is what this whole thing comes up. And yes, a lot of people have brought up the Mystery Incorporated show, which I have not seen, but from what I've been able to find, looks promising. It's just obviously I wasn't going to be watching a whole lot of stuff because of reasons everybody knows. But
reasons that prevented this episode for 2 weeks.
yeah. But the thing, it dawned on. Originally, we were going to cover just that show, but then I realized one, most of the others probably didn't suffer through it like I did, and I only suffered through the first 2 episodes. 2, it would have been us jumping on a bandwagon, and we don't do that.
No. And for 3, and the whole reason why we're going to be talking about other shows, is that when you look back, this isn't an isolated incident.
It's pretty common amongst the last 5 years.
No, for several years, there's been a bit of an irony where, quote unquote, adult animation ends up being written by children, and animation that was written for quote unquote children having more attempts at mature storytelling by comparison.
Oh yeah.
And I would note that the whole thing of animation supposedly being for kids but being written more maturely is not a new thing. But in the days of say the Batman animated series, we didn't have this contrast.
No.
Nope.
And I would say one of the big failings is, well, let's get the obvious one out of the way. Everybody trying to be South Park. The problem is much like when anyone follows a trend, they end up seeing the surface level and not the point.
Yeah. the thing with South Park, and I should note, this is coming from somebody who does not like South Park. I've never liked South Park, but I see what they were doing. Like, they were taking the opportunity to they tried to frame it like a children's show, but use it to make fun of and mock the ridiculousness of society, especially in a small town where shit like that runs rampant. So they were able to make fun of all these crazy topics and do all this stuff because they were always having a point. And there were times where that comedy led to some serious questioning of things. Didn't always work, didn't always hit the mark, but when they did, they fucking hit it out of the park.
I think,
Let's just remember that they even chased off Chef's voice actor Isaac Hayes when they started making fun of Scientology.
The thing that I will always respect South Park for, and this applies to the Simpsons. This applies to the Simpsons just as well, though obviously not zombie Simpsons, is not picking a favored side when it comes to what they're picking on. In fact, I remember a a 30-second spot where a 30-second ad spot for South Park where they apologized if they had left anybody out. The mindset of, to anybody we haven't offended yet, don't worry, we'll get to you.
But, like, those have, as Shade said, like, that setting, it makes all the messages they're trying to go through work. I think, like, the one that we all can relate to in terms of, like, understanding in some way, the South Park movie. One of the big themes about that was in a way, censorship partially with found language, but at the same time, how many of us just through anime? I'm going to use that as an example. How many times have we, as a family member, come in on us watching an anime and they don't understand the meaning of what we're seeing or think it's too graphic, even though that's not the point.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the South Park movie because that called out a certain hypocrisy.
Ooh.
Remember, folks, horrific, deplorable violence is okay as long as nobody says any naughty words.
Well, yeah.
And specifically calling out the notion of being okay with certain objectionable things, but completely not okay with other ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And JT is bringing up Duckman. I would say Duckman is an exception.
It's.
And in a lot of ways, both Duckman and the Critic I consider a bit ahead of their time.
Oh yeah, I was going to bring up the Critic as well
Definitely.
because there were adult animations going on long before South Park even was a thing, but a lot of those shows got neglected because they were so ahead of their time that most people forgot they existed, which is sad.
Yeah.
Because they're both Duckman and the Critic are really good shows.
Mm-hmm. And well, I keep using the nothing of value was lost gag for a reason.
Exactly.
And from what I'm not sure if this was ever outright stated, but I would believe that the Critic was primarily trying to take the piss out of Siskel and Ebert.
Oh, absolutely. It would not surprise me at all if that's exactly what they
Neither
did.
would I. Yeah, and same here. It wouldn't surprise me either. Yeah.
Especially since them having a TV spot of film criticism around that time would be a fitting puzzle piece.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was during Siskel and Ebert's prime days when they were the source to go to for movie reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Having something making fun of that, completely on point.
And it's not like they were the only case, because of course then you have the fact that I think Animaniacs took the piss out of them multiple times.
Oh yeah, it absolutely did.
Who didn't
Yeah.
Animaniacs take a piss out of it at all?
Basically, Animaniacs was the kid version of South Park. Anything was fair game.
Pretty
Uh-huh.
much.
They didn't. They didn't take the piss out of Prince because Dot refused to finger him. Look for Prince. I found him. No fingerprints.
Fingerprints.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Come on, that shows like
That got way past the censors. That was fantastic and smart.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, it was probably because
That reminds me, I need to catch up on the revival.
Uh,
but it's probably they probably got away with that one because they had something much worse in store. So they used that. They got rid of that to keep the actual one.
yeah. Apparently, that's the thing they used to do is they would create something so ridiculous that the stuff they actually wanted would look tame by comparison. They're like, all right, fine, we'll keep this. Cool.
but
But
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think we're both doing the same thing, getting back on point here.
Yeah.
So you go ahead.
Now, with that in mind, even with all that, Trey Parker and Matt Stone at their core are a couple of stoners, and have very stoner humor. Even if
Oh, absolutely.
and that was the other thing that I think. If I had to sum it down to something, a lot of people focused way too much on the shock value that they did in those early seasons, which as the years passed, they kind of dialed that back.
Yeah, they've really phased out the shock, the shock humor.
And instead of focused on kind of refining it, I liken it to somebody who is off their cocaine high.
Yeah.
Well, Matt Stone and Trey Parker are also getting older. Let's not forget that either. And they did plenty of irreverent humor prior to and alongside South Park. Everybody remembers Basketball, I'm sure.
Basketball and Beer Fest.
Or Orgasmo, the precursor to the Book of Mormon. I'm not kidding. Trey Parker plays a goddamn Mormon in that, who apparently is now a porn star hero, but he's not doing any of the sex scenes. He has stand-ins. At one point, they make fun of it, just putting a black guy in his costume and getting in the sex scene. they make fun of the poor production of porn movies that way.
Yeah.
I mean, the bad guy was Ron Jeremy. That was prophetic, considering what's happening in this day and age.
Foreshadowing there.
Yep.
And
Oh, yeah, let's not
Game
forget
Fan also
their
brings
magnum
up Team
opus.
America.
Team America.
Yeah,
World Police.
Team America. Which I've actually seen that movie. Oh boy.
America, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
But that's showing like that sense of humor and that type of comedy and writing, like even like stuff like the Book of Mormon, like you see that over the course of it. It was just more refining it, where they don't need the shock factor anymore.
Yeah.
I will admit I have a fondness for Beer Fest, but I have obvious reasons for that.
No,
Yeah.
you biased? Never.
But I think
Never.
getting back onto the main point of like how. Sorry, let's. I want to kind of get this back on the rails here because I think one of the reasons why today a lot of today's animation takes the wrong notes from this comes down to the ever so lovable favorite thing to talk about: executive meddling. And here's how. A lot of these executives, they see how South Park defined adult animation and took the idea of that shock value that we brought up before, creating those shocking moments, those like, oh my god, did they really just do that? But not realizing what that meant, and aiming it at our favorite group of people, the lowest common denominator. Mm-hmm. Because that's how you get all those ratings. You get that low common denominator. Everyone's going to be paying attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it seems to work. It seems to have worked very well for Rob Drydeck, since ridiculousness is the only thing on MTV these days.
Remember
There's a reason nobody
when
talks about that
music?
channel anymore.
Anyone remember when that used to be just focusing on music?
Yes.
You might as well just change the name because it's no longer music. Take the M out because there's no music on MTV.
Yeah, it's just a standard network now.
Like I remember like there was 30 minutes left, but now I think that's even gone.
Do we have to change video killed the radio star to reality killed the video star?
Pretty much. Pretty
Yeah.
much. Oh my god.
I'm pretty
read
sure
that
if I
already.
dig deep enough, somebody's made that song parody.
I'm sure.
But the thing when it comes to that sort of shock value or that sort of lowest common denominator stuff is, no matter how hard you try otherwise, it has a short shelf life.
Yep.
You can
it's
only-
a quick cash grab with long-term losses.
And for a lot of people, a lot of and this is an issue. This is an issue just overall in business of trying to make a lot of money now instead of a steady amount that you can keep relying on and build with.
I've complained about that with Monk so many times. At this point, it might as well just be, you don't have to complain about it anymore. You just say, refer to this argument, and there you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because we've all seen it in one form or another of trying to emphasize that sort of short-term gain, and we've seen what happens when certain companies decide to chase trends. In fact, the analogy that I used when it came to the state of The Simpsons is, in the early days, everybody was ripping off The Simpsons. Nowadays, The Simpsons is ripping off everyone else.
Pretty much.
It kind of has
Yeah.
to. It has to be a Frankenstein zombie, otherwise it won't survive.
Yeah. Considering seasonal rot that it's been going through.
I'd say I'd be remiss if I also did not point out the fact that the better writing from that team was through Futurama.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cohen and Groening did a much better job with Futurama, and now they're rebooting that too. Hooray!
Again!
That show just doesn't know when to die.
Clearly.
You ended that series so many fucking times now.
It's because nostalgia tards keep demanding for it to come back. Actually,
Whenever
they actually have a dedicated fan base of disillusioned, constantly nostalgic millennials who just want the pain to go away, and Futurama does that for them.
And eventually
Didn't,
it's going to backfire on them and it's going to hurt.
How many people have done like a parody of that plot idea?
And hell, we in my particular area of expertise, there was a game that was written called Futurama, now with dice.
Which seems to be in line with their humor somewhat.
Yeah, it was obviously a fan game, and it was obviously very tongue-in-cheek. But the thing that annoys me with the shock value kind of humor is, I'm annoyed both as a fan of animation and as a fan of comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love stand-up. I've never shied away from my love for stand-up. I would go through tapes of all manner of comedians like nobody's business. I spend way too many hours watching specials on Comedy Central because we didn't have HBO at the time, and sometimes watch specials on HBO when I could get lucky. I had done a watch party of all three of Chappelle's specials with some local friends of mine a while back. And I fully understand how being accused of Mencia is a very damning thing in the comic community. And I've had a healthy I do try and keep an eye on local stand-up, because I do have a healthy respect for anybody who's willing to do that, because you are on that stage with nothing but yourself.
Yep.
Would you say they're all by themselves?
Not doing that.
Not even swinging at that.
No, I haven't made that joke since Half Baked.
You're only saying that because you're black.
Fuck off.
God damn it, Dan.
It had to happen. It's been 2 weeks.
Well, he's already said the fuck off part. Let him rip, everybody.
It was like it. Zan was in the last 2 weeks. Zan must have been like a shaken up soda can.
I had too many video games to play, Monk. Like Wild Hearts has eaten my soul in the last 2 days.
We'll probably end up covering it down the road. But
super good.
It's not his new fix.
But the point is that I don't like bad comedy, and I know some people. Before anyone does the whole comedy is subjective thing, get your head out of your ass if you're going to use that card on me.
Paintballs are at the ready.
I ranted about this before we went live, but I am not a fan of that phrase, or at least I'm not a fan of the way that phrase has been used, because it's used as a get out of criticism free card.
It's the same argument that is made when people say, "Oh, the show was made for kids." Yeah, kids shows do better writing than you, fucker. Don't try.
Clearly, I've always hated the whole "it's for kids" argument. That's ugh.
And now the whole for kids thing is something that I've tackled elsewhere, and there's not a whole lot to really revisit with that particular issue. What I do think is the big reason why I say it's a get out of jail free card is it is used to basically pull a God of the gaps. You know, there's a gap about what is good, so you can say, this is good to somebody, and you could make the argument that somebody is going to enjoy it, but when you have that broad of a net, theoretically anybody could enjoy anything. But at the same time, I think people have a bigger bar of quality than they're willing to claim. Because when you've eaten a bad, even if you don't know why, you know when you've eaten a bad meal. You know when you've watched a bad television show. You know when you've when you've played a bad game. You may not know why, but you know that you don't like the quality of what you just had.
You know when you've heard a bad joke.
Mm-hmm. And there's a line from Seinfeld that I often use in these kind of things, because I can't remember the episode, but Seinfeld was a bit annoyed that somebody was converting to Judaism just for the jokes. And he goes to a priest to rant about it, and the priest says to him, "And this offends you as a Jewish person?" He's like, "No, it offends me as a comedian."
Mm-hmm.
That's basically my stance with this kind of thing. I feel if you're going to be doing comedy, at least do good comedy, and not the attempt at snark and winking to the audience. Because with a lot of the adult animation shows that try and do it, they either try and be offensive, and end up cringing because you can see how hard they're trying.
You're either offensive or you're not. Trying too hard just makes you a tryhard.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And any good comedian will know that it's more about precision than just having a joke that's funny.
Yep.
If it's fun, usually for comedians, like they know a joke is really funny. It's because they had enough time to build up to that big joke, the payoff.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Or that there are certain jokes that are going to work for certain audiences. A a factor that I know you are very familiar with, Shades, given the times I had to yell "read the room" when I was submitting things for Toku memes.
I think like
Or how many times you've had to yell "read the room" here?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Heck, I think it's like anyone who, when you look at like in terms of comedy, it's like there are certain topics that certain people can't do. Like I'm going to use myself as an example as a typical white male. I would not be able to do jokes, let's say, about certain things with race because it would be assumed wrong with me. But if you look at someone like, I'm going to use him just because he's the first one on the top of my head, Gabriel Iglesias, Fluffy. There would be some stuff with that he could do.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, there's a prime example that infamous story of the racist gift basket.
Exactly.
I see where you're coming from, but I do have a slight disagreement. You can, I think a white guy can use racial humor. It just has to do it in a different way. Say the whitest guy you know going in and ordering at a soul food restaurant.
Or you can be like me and not give a fuck and just make the joke.
Yeah.
But that's the idea. It's like when you see me, like you would not expect me to be able to do that type of thing, or it would be a while before I could do that because you would not expect that.
JT is saying not all jokes have to be funny. No.
No.
Saying not all jokes have to be funny is cope. Plain and simple.
It's like saying it's like saying not all games have to be fun. And we'll get to it one of these days, but there's a reason I don't respect art games as games.
Oh yeah.
Like, I question that saying a little bit, mostly because I've seen how they're using some of those in the medical field, but that's for another time.
Yep.
But now, of course, there are certain shows that have tried to both be funny and try and tackle serious subject matter at the same time, which you can do, but you are walking a very thin tightrope when you try and do that. And yes, I'm bringing up Big Mouth. The idea of trying to do a comedy about puberty on itself is not a terrible idea.
Oh no, the concept is solid.
This is one of where of course the big thing that made it fail so much is one, having Family Guy level humors, and two, well, the visual design.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a reason why I put the hormone monsters on the splash screen, because you take one look at these things and you're like, this is supposed to be for adults? What the fuck is this?
Exactly.
You know, at the very least, Johnny in the Tatami Galaxy was animated a different style to represent the protagonist's libido.
Yeah.
But there's also the fact that well, Tatami Galaxy is a Yuasa piece, and if you're watching Yuasa, you know exactly what you're getting yourself into.
That reminds me about tomorrow night.
Yep.
We finally get to finish that, eh, Monk?
Yep. So, of course, and truth be told, I know a lot of people blame South Park for this kind of issue, but if I'm being honest, I can't help but wonder if Family Guy is a bigger contributor to the problem.
I'd say it is, because
It really is, I agree.
Because South Park, while it had the shock value, one thing it never did was it never catered to the lowest common denominator, at least not heavily, and certainly not intentionally. But Family Guy, especially after it got revived, Oh, fuck yeah, did it ever.
Like, at the very least, you could say this with Trey Parker and Matt Stone with South Park. They were clever with the writing. When was the cleverest you could get that with Family Guy?
I mean, after a while, it started relying on the same gags over and over and over and over again because it literally could not come up with anything new to keep people entertained.
It also kept relying on the cutaway gags for a joke.
That's what I'm getting at. It kept relying on the cutaway gags because it literally could not come up with anything else, and it got stupid. And then that's the thing. Like it for comparison with South Park, one of its earliest running gags was Kenny.
Yeah.
We all know the line. We've all heard it a million times. Oh my God, they killed Kenny, you bastard. Mm-hmm. But after a while, Trey and Matt realized that joke's getting old. They literally killed that joke off.
Yeah.
And the few times they do, like, the few times I've seen them use it, whenever it's like, okay, nothing else is on, watch that. They say that in, like, passing. Like, it's not even funny. Like, they don't go with the, oh my God.
Yeah. They stopped making it a running gag and only brought it up occasionally when the mood called for it. They didn't make it a thing every episode, whereas Family Guy, every time, that's all they've got. And it got stupid after a while.
And
so
I made the Brian comparison because when I was talking about Velma earlier, because of if there's one character who kind of suffered a bit of character assassination, it was Brian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, like, I think, like, going back to what I said, it's like serious writing. Like, I think the closest they done, like, in terms of like having a serious, like, good one was the episode they killed Brian, and like, and even you felt that.
And even that, if I'm being honest, even the whole thing of killing Brian felt like a Hail Mary stunt.
Yeah, it was a desperation attempt.
Desperation, but at the same time, you could tell like they were at least giving it the right it deserved. Even then,
until they reversed course anyway.
Yep, because
it's like trying to make a big deal out of killing off a character in a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
It literally pulled the exact same stunt, and as soon as they pulled that stunt, everyone was like, "Oh, so this is just like that. Never mind. Fuck off." All the interest people had for it was gone. But it's a case of that there's this innate cynicism with adult animation that you can just see seething out of these other shows.
Mm-hmm.
Where they want to make fun of the stupidity of things, but they go after the wrong things to be cynical about. They're pointing their crosshairs at the wrong things.
Mm-hmm.
And
not only that, they believe themselves superior to the people who might actually make the correct decisions.
Yeah, there is certainly that. In some cases, it makes me wonder if somebody watched Daria and got the wrong idea.
I was gonna say earlier when we were mentioning Velma that it's like someone tried to make Daria and just made a caricature mockery of her in Velma.
Oh gosh, you're right.
Of course, the other thing is with I'd say an example of the nadir, and I'm glad that you used this, is Brickleberry. That is the epitome of trying to ride the trend.
Yep.
Especially since every single joke that was in the episodes of Brickleberry that I've seen felt like it was trying to do something offensive. And as we've mentioned before, when you're trying too hard, everybody knows it.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to avoid getting the smell of desperation on their clothes.
Now, of course, this is an issue that has somewhat lessened, but it is still present. If I'm being honest, for the longest time it was Fox who was my whipping boy when it came to the adult animation childishness thing. These days, I'd say it's Netflix. Or,
Oh yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
And actually, if I have to make a comparison, but when it comes to two shows that went the adult animation route, let's compare Velma to Harley Quinn.
You know, I was thinking about this
yeah.
myself. Yeah.
Normally, I wouldn't make this kind of comparison, but since both of them are trying to go with an older audience approach and are on HBO Max, I think the comparison is warranted.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So
And I remember watching when they did the first handful of episodes for one of the watch parties that we were in, Shades. All of us were busting out laughing and riffing the whole thing.
Yeah. And here's how we break this down. First of all, yes, they are exaggerated and amplified personalities of the characters. But when you really sit back and look at how they were portrayed, every character on Harley Quinn kept the core identities of those characters intact. Harley Quinn was a very chaotic, broken-minded girl because of what the Joker did. That was still intact. It's just now that she's matured, become a different person, broke away from the Joker, she's now trying to find her a new identity as a person. So she's still Harley Quinn at the end of the day. She's still easily angered. She's still chaotic. You know, she has her thing with Poison Ivy, which has been something established in the comics for a long fucking time.
It was established back in the animated series.
Oh,
Exactly.
hell yeah.
So
You know,
that's what I'm
where
saying.
she was made.
So they kept the core aspects of her character. They just matured it up a little bit and amplified it here and there. But you still look at Harley Quinn in that show and you go, yeah, that's fucking Harley Quinn. Same goes for every other character on that show. You know who these characters are. You see them and go, that's them. Even the heroes, like when you see Batman. Yes, he's a little silly at times, but it's still fucking Batman at the end of the day. You can still see Batman in them.
I mean,
Besides,
Batman.
Batman not
Batman?
been silly?
Yeah, I was about to say, Batman? Silly? I can't possibly imagine Batman doing something as silly as, say, walking around Gotham in the middle of winter, driving around Gotham in the middle of winter, and out a megaphone saying, "Has anyone seen the Joker?" No, that couldn't that couldn't possibly happen. He's the world's greatest detective, right, guys?
I will say that though. Here's in case people forget, like in terms of this is. I'm not going to look at to give an example, like how goofy it is with Batman. Need I bring up Batman the Brave and the Bold and half the shenanigans in there?
Well, we
No.
can go one further, go back to the 60s Batman, the Adam West era. That
Yeah,
shit got
I was going to bring up. Need we lest we forget the bat shark repellent from the '66 movie?
Which he got out of the helicopter.
Sometimes you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Silver
But yeah,
era
but-
Batman comics. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, exactly. but so there's been a precedent. But
Rage.
in this era where a serious, darker Batman has become the norm, to see that kind of Batman is still a bit of a surprise. But
Yeah,
it doesn't change
it's
the
very
point.
refreshing at times.
But
It is. But the point is, it's still Batman. You still see Bruce Wayne when you see them in Harley Quinn. That
well, even
is what the big difference
Joker.
is.
Well, even Joker is still acts the same. He's just recharacterized in some aspects.
now, something that's dawned on me with a lot of the bad cases of adult animation, I don't think a single one of them has a straight man.
Oh
No,
God, you're right.
everyone's a cynical bastard
Yeah.
or a dumbass. You've either got ruthless, cynical bitches and bastards, aka using Velma again. We've got Velma and Daphne, both cynical bitches, or dumbasses, both Fred and Shaggy.
Yeah.
Whereas,
It's like, that's
and this is the reason I bring up Harley Quinn in this, because a lot of people could play the role of straight man to the point where it was kind of a hot potato thing, which I honestly prefer. But of course, the biggest quote unquote straight man in this situation, and I know how that sounds, was Ivy.
Yeah.
Yep.
She
Ivy
rarely
was
ever
the
got
anchor.
silly.
Rarely got silly, was trying to be the voice of reason, and often falling on deaf ears.
I think that's like the one thing these animations forget. It's like this kind of go back to like the old comedy where it's like you have two people up there. You have to have the straight person because if
Abbott
you don't have,
and Costello.
thank you.
Yeah.
If you don't have the straight person, the person who has basically the one who's not in on the joke, quote unquote, the person
his
to
own
bring
first.
logic, bring reason. There's nothing like something to compare the funny stuff to. Nothing's funny. It's
Yeah.
just weird.
I would say
It's just annoying.
I don't think it would. If you want to see the weeb version of the straight man taken to its logical extreme, Keone in Haruhi.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
that's a perfect
he's-
example.
He is attempting to be the guy that keeps Haruhi's brain in reasonable places so that the world doesn't go shitty bonkers.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to have that anchor to reality. Even
And-
if it's not fully there, it's something.
Like, it's
And-
like even
and-
though it's sorry, Zan. The reason why I'm gonna say it's like anytime we have these character, I'm gonna use this. Anytime we have like the person isekai'd to a new world and they have nothing, they're the person in the new world. That has been done so many times. Not just in isekais, but any supernatural thing. It's basically someone who is brand new going to this other world, and they're bunched with a bunch of people who have lived it, breathed it, have been that new reality for so long. The reason it still goes on is because it's a tried and true formula of it working.
Yes,
And-
using an audience surrogate is what you're looking for.
Yes.
Someone
Not
someone
exactly quite the same argument, but in the same vein.
Yeah. And what I was about to say was that even in the case of stand-up comedy, where you don't necessarily have another person to bank off of, the straight man in a stand-up comic routine is usually the audience themselves.
Yeah.
Which is often why you'll see comics utilizing everyday things in their routines.
And why good comics will bash down hecklers with more jokes.
Hi, Steve Hofstetter. How you doing? Oh, yes, I'm a fan of his work. You need some tie to reality, something that we can connect with, or some person that we can connect with. Go like, that's us. Then, when we see the comparison between that and all the insanity going on around them, then you're like, oh, I see now. That's how it works.
Yeah.
It's always worked, and try to do otherwise just makes you look dumb.
Like, let's go with, like, let's put this in the form of the original Scooby-Doo story. Like, who was even though as crazy it is, there is a straight man among them, as unlikely as it is. But even then, it's like, because we had that to bounce everything off of, we could still enjoy some of the goofiness of it and its myriad variations.
Yeah.
But since we don't have that in, let's say, Velma, and the closest they want us to do still don't fit the norm for it, no.
Also, something I should note is ironic observation is not comedy.
No, it isn't.
Because, and if a lot of people seem to have this idea of just dropping something funny. It can equate to a joke, or but whenever you're constructing a joke, you have to go the extra mile. And the reason we're bringing all this up when it comes to an episode about the childishness is this whole thing of making things edgy, making things offensive, making things snarky, making things for an audience of one. That is the writing of a child.
Yeah.
It's all centered on the self.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'd like to equate this to. I'd like to point out a certain type of joke that that some people like, some people don't. Your classic dad joke. As a dad myself, I know this all too well. I'm an expert on the topic. But here's the thing. The key to a dad joke is not the joke itself. It's never the joke itself. The joke itself is just a joke. It's just a silly comment. The key to a good dad joke is the reaction. You need that someone to react to the joke. The cringe is the funny. Seeing someone go, "What the fuck?" That's the funny part. Because then you're like, yeah, that was dumb. All right? I don't tell a dad joke just because I think it's funny. I tell a dad joke specifically because I know people hate it. I want people to react and cringe to it. But that cringe is the funny part.
The best dad comedians are the ones who embarrass the shit out of their children with the joke.
There was a reason why one of my favorite VTuber moments was with Hana and Papa, because Papa was an even worse bit of chaos.
Oh, I love Papa Makia. He was a laugh riot because he embarrassed the shit out of Hana every chance he got.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the fact that he said something embarrassing, it's the fact that you see Hana losing her fucking mind over it. That was the funny part.
Yeah.
She ended up being the straight man.
Yeah, if I have to use another example of this, there's a video that I think is on either IGN or some other website's YouTube page, where they had Kratos doing dad jokes shortly after Dad of Boy came out.
I've seen that.
Yeah, Chris Judge doing dad jokes was good.
Oh yeah.
I think it was included on some of the blooper reels on the extras menu.
Which makes me think that he would just do those unprompted in the booth, because Shades,
Well,
you can probably relate to this kind of thing. I get the feeling that when you're with voice actors who are in booths for long takes for long amounts of time, you start to go a little bit crazy.
There's a reason why Scott McNeil said it best, is that they get to be inside padded walls all day. We just get paid for it.
Heck, I do have to point out that a lot of the vocal takes were taken on the mocap stage when it came to Data Boy.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Which means they were probably, which means that both of them were probably in the room together.
Yes.
And that would make perfect sense for them to pull off those jokes.
Yes, they were in the
father-son bonding.
Yeah, they were in the room together. Sonny and Chris Judge were both in the room together doing a lot of stuff, both for Data Boy and for Ragnarok. So that was always going to be a thing. Chris Judge. Everybody remembers Chris Judge for two things now. Most recently, Dad of Boy. But before that, Indeed. Everybody remembers Chris Judge as Teal'c. I swear to God.
It actually was shocked the hell out of me when I realized that he was the new voice of Kratos. Like, wait, that guy is now Kratos? What the fuck?
Yeah. But going back to dad jokes, since we've railed a little too far there, you're absolutely right. The audience, usually the children of the dad, are the target straight men for the dad being the funny guy or attempting to be. And the second-hand embarrassment is usually what other people are laughing at. The kids groan of the cringe, and then everybody else laughs at the kids cringing.
And Joker saying the best dad jokes are to punish the audience. I want to throw things at him.
No, he's not wrong. Actually, I can even bring a Toku.
No.
Hold on.
Shades, read what he said closely. That's
Oh no,
why.
I know exactly what he said. That's why I'm fine. That's why. And again, your guys' reaction is what makes it beautiful. But I actually can even name a Toku example of the dad joke being a perfect way to pull it off. Kyoryuger.
I
No
knew it.
song.
I knew who you were.
Fucking no song.
Yep.
He was the master of dad puns, but it wasn't him telling the jokes that got the laughs. It was seeing the others around and going, dude.
Though, you want to know who I consider to be a prototype for or at least the training of dad jokes when I was a little kid?
Who?
Colin Mockery?
No. Carlos. Carlos from the Magic School Bus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, you're right.
Please say normal field trip.
No, that's not Carlos.
That's Arnold.
That's
Arnold. The Arnold was the straight man in that show.
Yes,
without a
he
doubt.
absolutely was. The rest, like the entire rest of the class, those are all your funny men. Carlos was specifically your dad joke generator.
And I think what really hammered it home is when there was that episode with everybody's parents, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, if you get me.
Yeah.
But
When someone can out Carlos, that's an entirely new world
Yeah.
of comedy.
but
I need to rewatch that. It's been so long.
the thing when it comes to comedy, having a straight man in various forms is vital, even if the straight man is not designated as such.
Yeah.
Sometimes, if I have to use an example where the straight man is definitely the audience, it is anytime I am watching any show with the Black Pants Legion and Tom shows up. You're going to have to give them the skinny on internet famous Tom Bombadil.
No, I am not giving that skinny. I'm not Tex. Only Tex can give that skinny, and you know it, Monk. We would be doing a poor comparison.
You ever have that one person who, and I guess the best way for me to put it is, Tom is the Black Pants Legion's equivalent to Dave.
Yep.
Oh God.
Yes, I'm referring to that Dave, Shades.
I figured you were.
Yeah, the one from Titus.
Yeah. But what other Dave could I be thinking about, honestly? I knew what Dave you were referring to.
Mm-hmm. But the thing, this is the reason why the way comedy works and the way stand-up works is so fascinating to me, is because of the audience performer relationship. You could apply it to a certain degree when it comes to wrestling promos, but that's a whole other can of worms. But
Yeah.
because of the fact that a lot of people who write for either write or are mandated to do adult animation, the idea is we need to show how adult we are, and in the process of doing that, you end up we've already talked about the lowest common denominator. But there is also the fact that if I'm being honest, some of the comedians who end up making adult animation like Brickleberry aren't funny, and don't have an understanding of comedy and haven't tried to do comedy. Like I'm gonna be completely honest. I never got the big fucking deal with Daniel Tosh.
Never enjoyed his work.
Yeah.
I didn't hate him. He just seemed kind of, he came off like a poor man's Ryan Seacrest. And I don't even like Ryan Seacrest. But it's, and when it comes to Seth MacFarlane, I honestly think his heart is more in Orville than it is in Family Guy.
Yeah, it really is.
At this
from
point,
what I've
definitely.
heard.
I think he only does Family Guy because the network execs insist that he has to keep that show alive. Otherwise, he would have killed it off by now.
I think it's more. I think it's more so he can make them. He can make the money to do Orville.
Yeah, because Orville has a straight man.
Mm-hmm.
But Family Guy does not. It has long since lost the straight man.
Who was the original straight man?
Probably Meg.
Meg or Brian, I think, would be your two likely candidates.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see that with.
Meg was more a butt monkey to jokes than a straight man.
Meg
It
was the
really
I'd say Brian was the straight man.
yeah.
Yeah.
But he's since lost that title, and now the show has gone to shit because of it.
And
No.
as far as if you were to ask me who the straight man was when it came to, say, The Simpsons, it's a hot potato situation.
It was most often Lisa. Most often.
Most often.
But
Though I'd say
even-
secondary would be Marge.
Yeah.
Yes. But even then, sometimes, like when Marge was the whole censorship episode and the taking down the burlesque house, the straight man there was the rest of the Simpsons family against Marge.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
reason why I said it's a hot potato situation,
Yeah.
which,
Which.
if I'm being honest, is something that I prefer. I mentioned this when we were talking about when we did the Avatar reconstruction way back when, but I'm not, and also revisited it for I think the first volume of the Ruby reconstruction. But I'm not a big fan of a designated comic relief character.
Correct. We did go over that quite a bit in both of those situations, and have mentioned it obliquely even since then. There, specifically, we would point out the difference between there being the dedicated comic relief of Bolin in Legend of Korra compared to how in the original Avatar, Sokka may have ended up being the comedian most of the time to people who aren't remembering the show very well, but comedy was evenly split between the entirety of Team Avatar for the
it was
entire
definitely.
run.
You can have
must look
someone who is
between the
often the comic relief. That's fine. But they have to have moments where they're not the comic relief. You
And
have to
Sokka was
have-
badass as fuck.
Yeah. There were times where there were more often than not, yes, Sokka was often the butt monkey of a joke. He was often the one being silly. But there was just as good amount of times where Sokka ended up being the big player in the game and being the serious one, being the one to take charge. That's what made him such a memorable character, because now it's not just funny, he's funny with a purpose.
He's funny with a purpose, and he is a badass non-bender among a bunch of superpowered benders. It's basically a badass normie among supers, and that's another thing that made him stand out. But we just as many times had jokes with Aang. Aang loved to play around and make jokes. Or
Oh, absolutely.
of course, Toph making Aang into the butt of jokes because, well, Toph likes to make everybody into the butt of jokes since she's blind.
Hell,
And
even
she uses
Zuko
that
had
to
a
her-
couple of silly moments throughout the series.
Absolutely. Well, that's rough, buddy. Come on, that was a deadpan joke. He was being a deadpan snarker, and he didn't even realize it.
I remember distinctly, like, the Aang losing the fire when he and Zuko had to carry the dragon's flames without letting it burn out, and then you have the childish squabble of Aang trying to get Zuko to let him borrow his flame, and you can hear it all the way down at the base of the pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, he's not going to hear us. Down at the bottom, you can't hear him. But anyway, I got him out, guys.
All right, man.
All right.
Stay frosty. And
But yeah,
I bring all these kind of things up to establish that there is such a thing as a quality standard when it comes to comedy, and when you're trying, and a lot of these works always end up being comedies, which is something that honestly frustrates me. Simply because there's other genres to delve into.
yeah. To go back to Velma for a minute. Instead of it being such a snarky comedy, Why don't you instead made it a more serious series, exploring the aspects of those personalities that we've all known, and really dive deep in what made them into who they are? You could have easily done that, had a few jokes here and there, but still make it a more serious series. I think that would have honestly worked out better.
Yeah.
The show tries to set itself up as a murder mystery. Unfortunately, it does not have the balls to go all the way through it, and the whole murder mystery ends up being a farce. But picture this: you have the whole thing of this. Oh, this is my origin story, and it starts with a murder. But through whatever situation you want to go with it, she has to solve this mystery on her own, and has absolutely no skills, and is completely over her head. Just the whole thing of, how the fuck am I going to get myself out of this? It could be something as simple as saying yeah, I'm a detective. I have detective skills. I can figure this out. When she actually doesn't. Mm-hmm. That is leaning a bit into comedy, but it's not trying to be a comedy.
It's comedic elements within a more serious narrative.
And I will. Yeah. And if the savvy among you may think that I'm cribbing notes from Phoenix from the numerous amount of times that Phoenix Wright was in over his head. Well, if you're gonna steal from the best.
Yes. Except for the localization, I still think that all of those games need to be retranslated so that they're in Japan, where all of the references make fucking sense. Putting him in LA was a bad move for Capcom of America at the time, and now they're kind of committed to the bit.
Maybe that's the reason why having a story involving his ancestor was a good move.
You mean the great? Oh man, his ancestor. That one was a trip, and I do mean a trip.
Mm-hmm. But go all in on doing a murder mystery. And this is also where the tradition problem ends up rearing its ugly head. Because I get the feeling a lot of people, when they do the adult animation thing and then descend into the comedy route, do it because they think that's what you have to do, which is a vicious circle in and of itself.
Yeah, mm-hmm. and especially in this day and age, when it's been shown that more serious series end up doing better. I mean, chat brings up Primal. I mean, I'm not a big fan of that series, but from what little I was able to glean from watching it on Toonami, it was a series that had some dramatic moments. It had some seriousness. It had its moments of silly, but more often than not, it was badass at times. Like, that's how you do it. Just don't worry about being silly unless you need a little bit of levity here and there.
Mm-hmm. And I will freely. If I need to use an example of a serious series that had a bit of levity, I have to bring up the best pairing in the grim world of Perilous Adventure. Gotrek and Felix. One is a slayer, the other is his remembrancer. The best way for me to describe it is, and Pancreas is described as this, is Gotrek is Goku and Felix is Krillin. Nowhere near as powerful, but that doesn't mean you should take him lightly. It's just that people forget that kind of power difference when Gotrek is trying to fight. Gotrek is trying to fight the sun.
Right.
Which of course is ironic because he's a slayer. It's just that he's kind of bad at it because he's not good at the whole dying thing. But Felix is the one who it's often through his perspective that the books go through, And once again, we have that straight man, but we have a variety of stories that they end up going through. Of course, with some of that, you do have, but even with that, there are other characters that are able to add a bit of levity, and even for as grimdark as Warhammer and 40K can get, there is still an element of black humor or some forms of British humor, especially with the orcs. But the key thing is variety. And incidentally, I do think that's the reason why so many people have jumped onto the manga train, because of the fact that there isn't one genre that's dominating.
Yep.
There's trends in certain genres of manga and anime for sure. I mean, we're just now coming off the isekai boom, but it never stays that way forever. Eventually, a new genre of anime and manga suddenly starts taking hold, and I'm pretty sure we're going to start seeing the throes of that very soon.
Mm-hmm. And even with, I know that GameFan brings up stuff like BoJack Horseman, Close Enough, Final Space, and Invincible. I don't want to count Invincible because adaptation.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Final Space, so I'm not going to comment on that. Close Enough, once again, I haven't seen, so no comment. BoJack Horseman, it only got as dramatic as it did a few episodes in. Like, if you look at the first couple episodes of BoJack Horseman, it feels like a poor man's Family Guy. And a lot of people ended up overlooking it because of that. Because a lot of people had the mindset of only watching like the first 2 or 3 episodes. Then BoJack Horseman came along, and a lot of reviewers ended up changing their policy to cover the first 5 episodes when they do a review. Granted, I think if you're doing a review of something, you should go through the full season, but I know that's not always possible. And I haven't seen Inside Job, so that's another one that I can't comment on.
Right.
Now, I've been trying to avoid it for the longest time, but when it comes to the whole trend chasing thing, there is one series that has contributed to trend chasing in the last few years, and that is Rick and Morty.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Now, I don't hate Rick and Morty. I hate some of its fan base, but I say that with every fan base. My mantra has always been fans, not fandom.
Yep.
I do think that the canary in the coal mine was Get Swifty. That's where things started to slowly go downhill after that. But I think at one point there was the mix of wanting to be serious but not, like wanting to not wanting to do serialized stories, but then at the same time wanting to be episodic and trying to have your cake and eat it too, which you can't really do that. The closest case of doing that is Gargoyles, and even then that wasn't exactly the case.
No.
Like, I'm massively stretching it only because of the tiers and tentpoles policy that they had, which was more of a policy to appease Disney than anything else.
Yeah. But with Rick and Morty, like, it was a good attempt. I'll give them credit where credit is due. It was a good attempt. But they kind of wrote themselves into a corner eventually where they kept wanting to tell this big storyline, but at the same time, they had all these crazy ideas they wanted to do, and you couldn't have both. They tried. God knows they tried. Even down our throats they were going to try. But it was inevitable that they were going to have to go one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, when they tried, it ended up it ended up backfiring, and they ended up, I think, taking it a bit personal.
Yeah, they literally did a whole scene where they basically said, "We're just gonna keep doing the way we've been doing things. Take it or leave it." Like they literally were shoving in our faces, "We're gonna keep mixing it up. Deal with it, fuckers."
Which,
But it's a great way to talk down to your audience like that.
Mm-hmm.
and given the glut of content that's out these days, good way to convince them to watch something else, or just not watch you. And Rick and Morty doesn't suffer from the shock value situation, but it does suffer from the cynicism situation,
Yeah.
which is why I think it qualifies here. The other th- the but overall, I would say that some of the bigger issues when it comes to this whole childishness thing is trying to be a impression of maturity rather than actual maturity, and trying to and thinking that trying to be funny when you don't have an understanding of comedy. Now, I do I know that when it comes to stuff like Velma and the like, everybody did the whole thing of no hate watching. Um, I'm beginning to think that hate watching is a boogeyman. Like I hear more about people saying don't hate watch than people actually hate watching. And there's also the fact that no matter how hard you try, people aren't going to look away from a car crash.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, when something is that legendarily bad, people are going to make videos about it, and subsequently people are going to be looking at it to see how bad it is. That does not mean that doing so is going to be rewarded with a second season or something like that. I maintain that in those situations, second seasons were inevitable. It's just being used as a way to get some cheap media attention. But in a but I can't help, and I've been speculating this for a while. Does anyone else get the feeling that the whole concept of don't hate watch is meant to is I'm not sure if it's meant to, but is at the very least being used as a gaslight to keep people from critiquing a work?
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of people, like, they think by saying, "Hey, don't hate watch," they're saying you can't hate on this series. You either watch it and like it, or you don't watch it at all.
That's another phrase I hate, the whole don't watch. How am I going to know if I don't like it if I don't watch it?
I mean, we also see what that attitude gets people. Just look what happened to Frosk and G4.
We've covered that, and I think and that the death of that thing was inevitable, especially since the news that we've been getting since really makes it feel like it was one giant vanity project.
Anyway, I knew that.
Yep.
I figured that out the minute it was announced.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all knew, we just needed validation, and the fact that the person running it was the boss's son really hammered it home for all of us.
Uh-huh.
But I do think I do think that the more times that we see these bad adult animations get publicly spanked, the less inclined people are going to be to doing this, especially since one of the big things that got people pissed off was when Velma had come out. A bunch of other shows were either on their way out or getting canceled, but this stays.
Yeah, that did not do Velma any favors. It's like,
Oh,
so wait,
not
we're gonna
at
cancel
all.
these other projects that everyone was hyped about and looked like it was gonna be really good, but we're gonna keep this abomination that even from the outset people were like, this does not look like it's gonna be good. I don't care about this one. Wait, that's the only thing you're keeping? What the fuck?
The big one that I remember hearing was that there was apparently talk of a Hex Girls spinoff that got shit canned in favor of this.
Yeah, that was an insult.
I've heard of that. I don't think that was a spin-off. I think that was like an animated. That might have been like an animated movie or something that featured the Hex Girls.
That's what KR36 is saying in the chat. Yeah. Like, that was something that was going to be in universe to what we've already seen, like, connected to the original movie. And that would have been really awesome. And yet, that got scrapped, and we got this instead. Like, that's a low blow right there to a lot of fans.
Especially since we haven't seen the Hex Girls in anything since, I think, the 90s.
Pretty much. And some say that show may not have done well because of how long it's been since they've shown up, but it couldn't have done as bad as what we saw.
Oh, yeah, true. Oh, they were a damn fan. Granted, I haven't seen Yesu, so I wouldn't know. But
yeah, I think they've made sporadic appearances.
Yeah, they have, but I'm more meaning like something focusing on them or them like having a major role.
Yeah, but then there was also, that would have also played into that whole nostalgia bomb that, people would have bought into that. Like, oh, hey, I remember the Hex Girls. Those were awesome. That would have easily sold. That would have done really well because of that. And no, instead we get something, another remake on top of the 50 million other Scooby-Doo remakes, and this one's an absolute pile of trash.
And something that I've mentioned in the past, when it comes to the fixation on remakes, because everybody does the whole thing of lambasting Hollywood for remakes, which is certainly not undeserved. But I will maintain that they're only looking at half of the picture.
Yeah,
because they're not focusing on the public that is nostalgia obsessed. If you're gonna be casting blame, you have to cast it on both sides of the coin.
Agreed.
Yep.
And those of you who have seen or been on the shit show streams where we talk about various games know full well that I have a vehement disagreement with those who insist on nostalgia. Especially those who try to claim that there's no good games coming out.
Bullshit.
Oh, it is bullshit. But a lot of times it's people relying on a romanticized idea of past decades.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that I do now granted, there is the elephant in the room that animation is certainly expensive, but so is any other television production.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a moot point as a result. Yeah, that's a moot point.
Especially in this day and age where special effects are all over the fucking place. So of course,
Exactly.
you're still going to be paying for animations anyway, regardless of whether or not it's all animation or just CG effects.
Yeah, with how commonplace VFX is now, that's
And good VFX, unless you're Disney, because you probably are familiar with this thing, but there's been word through the grapevine that the top VFX studios do not want to work with Disney. Mostly because they're not very good at the whole paying them thing.
Ugh.
There's
no excuse for Disney not paying.
Or having them work excessive. Some people have said payment issues. Some people have said working excessively long hours.
That one I can believe.
Honestly, I can believe both of them. But I do think that this particular motif of adult animation is always going to be there on some level, but it's the law of diminishing returns. I mean, I know that Fox has made a big deal of their animation block for the longest time, but when I think of the animations on those kind of blocks that people are actually willing to watch, one of the big names that comes to mind is Bob's Burgers, and Bob's Burgers is not nearly as quote unquote adult as some of the ones we've talked about.
Yeah.
If anything, it's fairly mundane. Not mid, just it doesn't do anything more than it needs to.
Mm-hmm.
But with that said, I think we've exhausted this particular topic. Next week we will be doing, for the first time, a Life Path episode, because it's been a few months since I've done that, and especially with the 2-week hiatus, I really want to get back into the groove of things. On Tuesday, Maddie and I will be doing The Men Who Stare at Sports Ball, doing our debriefing of the NFL season, and seeing how much shit I'm going to have to eat because of how bad my predictions were. As some of you may recall,
that you made predictions is amazing in and of itself. You really shouldn't have.
Probably, but I'm a masochist. God is punishing me for my hubris, and my work is never finished.
At least this time, I'm not accompanying you on that particular work.
It is up. There is some more stuff that I've got coming. But it's up in the air, because as soon as I got things set back up, I started going on a bit of an email frenzy, because there were a handful of people that did reach out to me about doing interviews, but obviously I didn't have my move-in date, because it's a long story. Which is why I was in hotels for so goddamn long.
That got expensive quick.
It wasn't as, because of some deals, it wasn't as expensive as it could have been, but it definitely fucked with my diet, because I was at the hotel restaurant for dinner for several nights.
Yeah, that'll do it.
I got to have a Moscow Mule for the first time. That was nice.
Nice.
Not gonna be my drink of choice, and everybody always looks at me crazy whenever I ask for Guinness. I think they
beer.
Well, Flutter, Guinness is a meal.
Yes.
Fair enough.
But to be fair, the whole meal thing kind of cancels out when you're doing a bunch of heavy lifting all damn day.
Yeah, it very much does.
So that's what I've got planned for the week. I'm going to be endeavoring to work on getting more content out. I do have a couple I've got a couple scripts for future videos. It's just that when we had to do the move, I suspended doing any recording of them for obvious reasons.
Yeah, naturally.
But now that I'm back, I don't have to worry about that. So please look forward to that going forward. And of course, Valley of the Judged will be returning. We are going to be continuing our look at Convictor Drive, even though there's now an updated version of the PDF that fixed that one issue that we had to cover our ass about a few weeks ago.
It's worth covering our asses, though. It shows that we have standards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But with all that said, as always, a sincere thanks to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there will be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk, and join the watch.